From Look Both Ways by Jason Reynolds. The first chapter is called WaterBoogerBears. This story was going to begin like all the best stories, with a school bus falling from the sky. But no one saw it happen. No one heard anything. So instead, this story will begin like all the good ones, with boogers. If you don't get all them nasty half-baked goblins out your nose, I promise I'm not walking home with you. I'm not playing. Jasmine Jordan said this like she said most things, with her whole body. Like the words weren't just coming out of her mouth, but were also rolling down her spine. She said it like she meant it. Said it with the same "don't play with me" tone her mother used whenever she was trying to talk to Jasmine about something important for her real life. And Jasmine turned up the music in her ears real loud to drown her mother out. And scroll on, scroll on. If you don't take them earbuds, earphones, or whatever they're called out of your coconut head, it's gonna be me turning up the volume in the bass, and I ain't talking about no music. That tone. Jasmine's booger removal warning was aimed at her stuffy-nosed best friend, Terrence Jumper, TJ. Well, Jasmine called him her best friend who's a boy, but she didn't have best friends who were girls, so TJ was her best friend. And she was his. Been like that for a long time, since he moved on to Marston Street, 3 houses down from her. Since the only way their mothers would let them be walkers was if they walked together, because they were the only kids who lived on their block. Since 6 years, so since forever. The bell rang, and Jasmine and TJ had just left their class for the day, the only class they had together, life science with Mr. Fantana. "You've been back to school for 2 days, and you already starting with me?" TJ spun the black lock dial confidently, like he could feel the difference in the grooves and would know when he landed on the right numbers. "How could I not? Look at them things! Honestly, TJ, I don't even know how you're breathing right now," Jasmine continued. Their lockers were right next to each other, and luckily, because Jasmine, unlike TJ, turned her lock with an intense concentration, glaring at it as if the combination could up and change any second, or as if her fingers might stop working at any moment. And if for some strange reason either of those things happened, at least she knew TJ was right there to help. TJ shrugged, tossing his science book onto the floor of the metal closet, the smell of feet wafting up from it like a cloud of dust, unsettled and unsettling. The floor of his locker was littered with empty snack bags that Jasmine had slid through the door vent between classes over the last 2 days. Trash, yes, but Jasmine and TJ called them friendship flags, the litter of love. And because Jasmine had been gone for a while, they were basically notes that said, "I've missed you," in Cheeto dust. Then, finally, with a hardened snot like tiny stones rolled in front of the entrances of his nose, TJ turned the bottom of his shirt up and mopped it. A streak of slime smeared across his lips as he swiped and pinched and dug just enough for it to count as a dig, but not enough for it to count as diggin'. TJ tilted his face upward so Jasmine could get a clear line of sight into his nostrils. "Better?" he asked, half sincere, half hoping there was one more booger left, and that it was somehow making a mean face at Jasmine. Jasmine stared into TJ's nose like she was peering through a brown microscope of flesh, and she did this totally unfazed by the fact that TJ had just used his t-shirt, the one he was wearing, as a tissue. And why would she be bothered? Not that it wasn't disgusting, it was, but she'd known him a long time. Had seen him do things that made boogers on the bottom of a t-shirt seem like nothing more than added decoration. Booger bedazzle. A little flavor for his fashion. Had seen him use his fingers to pick gum off the bottom of his sneakers and hers. And of course nothing would ever beat the time he clapped a mosquito dead right when it had bitten him, then licked the slime off his arm. That one Jasmine had dared him to do. Paid him $1 for it. Worth it for both of them. "You know, I can see straight through to your brain," Jasmine said, pretending to still be examining. "And it turns out there's a whole lot of it missing." She plucked TJ's nose. "Psych, psych, psych, psych. Nah, you good. I guess I can be seen with you now." "Whatever." Locker slam. "I mean, we all boogers anyway." "You might be a booger." Locker slam. But me, I ain't no booger. That's what you think, TJ went on as they swapped backpacks. His was light. Jasmine was packed with every class's textbooks and all the world's notebooks. Makeup work. She could have carried it herself, but TJ was concerned about her back, about her muscles, because she was still recovering from the attack. They headed down the crowded corridor, noisy with sneaker squeaks and thick with end-of-day funk. See, I've been thinking about this. Boogers ain't nothing but water mixed with, like, dust and particles in the air and stuff like that. How you know? Jasmine interrupted. Knowing TJ, he could have heard this anywhere. Like from Cynthia Sauer. Everybody called her Say-So, who jokes 99.99999% of the time. Looked it up online once, TJ explained, to try to figure out why they so salty. Wait. Jasmine thrust a hand up as if walling off the rest of TJ's words. You eat them? Come on, Jasmine. It ain't fair to hold my past against me, dang. TJ shook his head. Now, if you're done interrupting, let me continue with my hypothesis. He broke hypothesis down into 4 fragmented words to put some spice on it. Hypothesis. So, boogers are basically water and dust. He put a finger in the air. And human beings are mostly water, right? Ain't that what Fantana said at the beginning of the year? Right. Okay, follow me. Every Sunday when we be at church, they always be talking about how God made us out of dust, right? TJ and Jasmine went to the same church, where they sang in the youth choir together. TJ always asked Mrs. Bronson, the choir director, to let him sing solos, even though his voice was all over the place. A set of wind chimes in a hurricane. And Jasmine's singing wasn't much better. Only difference was she knew it and would never think to ask for a solo. She loved to wear the graduation robes and harmonize and sway and clap, snuggling her voice into the others like drawer into dresser. Her mother always told her, holding a note is talent enough. Even though TJ couldn't hold a note, that definitely wasn't his talent. He could hold a conversation. So he continued. God making man from dust and blowing breath into his nostrils and all that, right? I guess. You think God's breath stank? What? Never mind, probably not. TJ got himself back on track. So, if God made man from dust, and now for some reason man and woman, Jasmine tacked on, yeah, and woman, consists of mostly water, then basically we water and dust, right? TJ was waving his hands around like he was drawing some grand equation on an invisible board. Jasmine didn't say nothing, and she didn't need to for TJ to bring his theory home. Which means, TJ concluded, and Jasmine could practically see the drum roll behind his eyes, we all basically boogers. TJ wore satisfaction on his face like good lotion, and Jasmine wore confusion on hers like she'd been slapped with a gluey palm. Wrong, she clapped back. You ain't gotta believe me, TJ said, holding the door for Jasmine as they finally made it out of the building. Oh, I don't. You don't have to, TJ repeated. But that don't mean it ain't true. See, no matter what you think I be doing in school, I really be learning. And seriously, I need to start teaching, because while all these so-called scientists and teachers like Mr. Fantana be busy trying to figure out if aliens are real, I've already figured out that boogers are like the babyest form of babies. This made Jasmine spit air. See, even though TJ was ridiculous and annoying and sometimes gross, she appreciated the fact that he always made her laugh, whether she wanted to or not. Whether he was trying to or not. He was always there to chip some of the heart off, tear at the toughness Jasmine had built up over the school year. It had been a rough one for her. It started with her parents separating and her father moving out. There was no drama around it, no fighting, nothing ugly, nothing like the movies, at least not that she knew of. Just a really uncomfortable conversation at the kitchen table with her folks looking at her like she was an exotic fish in a sandwich bag, darting back and forth while she squirmed in her seat as if her skin were too tight for her body. We love you very much. It's not your fault. Sometimes relationships change. Sometimes people are better apart. None of this is your fault. Your father and I love you very much. Your mother and I love you very much. Actually, that part was just like the movies, especially the ones about girls her age. The kitchen table conference. The follow-up knock knock on the bedroom door. The kid cussing at the dad. The mom saying language. The weekend visits. The awkwardness of both parents asking if everything is all right. Over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that was just the first quarter. That was before she had her worst attack. And not an attack by someone else. She ain't got jobs or nothing. Instead, her body attacked itself. Jasmine had a blood disease since birth, sickle cell anemia, which can affect almost every part of the body, organs, joints, even vision. But for the most part, it hadn't given Jasmine any real problems. A little pain sometimes, but nothing too bad. Until this year, when she went into full-on crisis and her body became ablaze. At least that's what it felt like. Her hands and feet swelled like plastic gloves full of water, heavy and tight, ready to burst. Her muscles felt like they'd become wood, and she imagined her bones were splintering and growing bones of their own. Jasmine was out sick for a month, her locker unopened, the lock unturned. Her mom and dad, together and apart, weirdly hovering over her hospital bed like aliens from movies, even cornier than teenage family dramas. Her parents' coldness thawed by the one and only TJ, who would show up, crack some jokes, break some ice, and leave some empty potato chip bags next to Jasmine's bed to add to the 30 he'd left in her locker. Friendship flags. And when Jasmine finally returned to Latimer Middle School 2 days ago, after being jumped with questions from classmates who'd almost never spoken to her before she got sick, people who looked at her sideways for being so close to TJ because, quote, boys and girls just can't be friends. Jasmine and the guidance counselor, Ms. Lane, had to figure out how she was going to catch up on her work. Couldn't do it while she was laid up because she could barely move. It hurt to hold a pen, hurt to turn a page, which was how she knew she wasn't a booger. Couldn't have been a booger. She wasn't gooey enough.